CEO of Onehouse. We know Joru is no introduction needed for them. Um, we have Shuveb, one of the founder of Zipstack, and Divyansh, one of the founder of Houseware. So I have some vested stack in the Houseware, so hope he's doing good on that side of it. And Aswin gonna moderate the panel, so enjoy.
Hey, thanks, Anand. I was originally not supposed to do this because we never factored for a moderator for a panel and then we realized our mistake 1 hour before. So nothing is prepared, right? So, hey, thank you first. Now, let me start with an obvious question that we were discussing just minutes back. What exactly is a modern data stack? And we'll go in a quick round robin over here, at least from two of you. What is a modern data stack?
Okay. All right. So I'll talk about what I understand it to be, which is honestly mostly from a marketing perspective. I had never heard about this term before I started the company. Been safely living in this bubble of big consumer internet companies, data platforms, the data lake side of things, right? So I take it to be basically like if I understand it to be a data stack built completely from a bunch of open source tools with data sitting pretty much in a data warehouse alone. If that's what I understand it to be, I don't know if is that a giveaway? Should I talk about my opinion on this dead or not?
Give your opinion. That's what.
Okay, all right. So I don't know if that's dead. That's a separate thing. We can talk about it. But I definitely think there is probably a better alternative, better way of doing things. Right? That's at least what I believe in. It should be a more interoperable. There should be more choices in that stack. Right.
I want to get Divyansh's point of view because he was in the modern data stack. He was part of Atlin and pretty much defined being part of a lot of go-to-market as well over there. What's your point of what's a modern data stack and how do you find it relevant? And how did you find it relevant even in the past? Not even. Let's not talk about current or future. What did you find it relevant?
Yeah, so I think it seems like I was in the modern data stack, but I walked out of the room. That's not what happened. I think modern data stack was a good abstraction of concept which was created to understand 4 or 5 things, how do they come together for customers. And it did its job well, as Vinoth said, from a marketing perspective, made the job of buyers easier to understand how to use these tools together. At the same time, just like any abstraction, it wasn't a perfect abstraction, right? So my opinion is it's dead in the context that we don't have a better alternative, but also it is not at a place where everyone is adopting it. So I think we are talking about the zero interest phenomena earlier, and I think we are at a stage where companies are not buying that many tools. So all the companies which are trying to fit into the modern data stack and try to solve individual problems are now trying to figure out how do they go broader into the equation so that more customer problems can be solved. And I think that's the right way to think about it because every company has different stages as they go through progression. And it might not just be that they need 6 individual tools to do cataloging, governance, a warehouse, ETL, and things like those, right? So while all of those capabilities are important, I just do think that there is definitely room for consolidation and not maybe calling it the modern data stack, something else.
Okay, you want to redefine the word. Joe.
Well, I'll give you my take real quick. A quick history lesson. I date the modern data stack as starting November 2012 when Redshift came out. And you can get a data warehouse by the hour for 25 cents an hour, which was pretty cool. Before that, right, you had to get a data warehouse. If you want a data warehouse, you have to spend millions of dollars, typically on an Oracle Teradata contract, really onerous and whatnot. So I view the start of the modern data stack as being 2012-ish. Because if you look at where the ecosystem started going then, it's basically SaaS-based, cloud-based tooling for the purpose of analytics in a modular, interoperable fashion, right? So you saw a whole ecosystem. I remember when the COO of Fivetran,
Fraser.
No, it was Taylor Murphy. He emailed me about this idea of doing ELT, and I was like, this has got to be the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard in my life. I think I wrote him back something like that. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, well, he's onto something, really. If you can leverage the compute, that's pretty cool. So anyway, but what you started seeing is a whole ecosystem of SaaS cloud-based tools developing around this whole this cloud-based data warehouse. And I really feel like that's where it started. That's what I consider to be the classical definition of the modern data stack. We can talk about whether it's that or not.
I want your point, Shuveb, as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think first it's a pretty terrible name, because what happens next year, modern data stack 2, like new folder
I think
1, new
I'm
folder
the only
2.
guy in the panel who still likes the term modern data stack.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's a pretty terrible name, but like hey, Joe said, right? I mean, the moment you had like cloud-based services come on, I think that's why I was just talking to you a while back. I said, hey, it's actually a cloud data stack. You had to go from Hadoop, but then again, a bunch of cloud data stack is probably a better name. And then, like for example, some of the folks that I met here, what they're trying to do is like a integrated cloud data stack, rather than going and buying pieces from 10 different people. Exactly.
Unified
stitching
word.
it together. There's probably moving towards, we don't know whether it will be a model in the future, whether you'll have one company doing like 5-6 different things where you stitch stuff together. But I think that's where it's getting started, and we don't know which direction in which it's going. But whether it's dead or not, it's
Okay, before we discuss and debate on whether it is dead or not, did you come across anything that is worthy that the last 3-4 years where the modern data stack was in momentum, the lingo and the companies that were part of the modern data stack, do you think that they did justice to what they did? Did they revolutionize in some parts? In parts, I believe Fivetran, Stitch, and to Airbyte, Kabula, they kind of commoditized that ingestion, right? And DBT to some extent with templating. Catalog, again, you've got tons of companies that have tried to address that. They focus on a problem. I sometimes feel they specialized in it and made it mature and made it very easy for people to consume. Thoughts on that? Divyansh, I want to start with you and then take Joe's point on that as well.
Yeah, that's I think an interesting question to ask, right? Because every trend that comes and goes, or a fad that comes and goes, has definitely skid marks that are left behind. Now it's for us to judge whether those skid marks lead us to something positive or negative altogether. One good thing I think overall, to talk about your point, what has been left behind of the modern data stack, there definitely has been a lot more skill gap that has been bridged between companies which were not able to do things earlier, are able to do that sooner in their journey, are able to recruit talent because of the commoditization of skills as well. Talk about Snowflake, for example, right? I mean, you talked about Redshift, Joe, and it came out as the emergence of the modern data stack. Snowflake sort of took it to another level.
Yeah.
And essentially what it did was it made it super easy for anyone to spin up a data warehouse, right? You did not require a team of 5 data engineers who are basically trying to figure out what's happening, which machine is going down, how do I auto-scale this thing, all of those kind of problems that most of us have seen in this room. Snowflake made it super easy for anyone non-technical to also just start a data warehouse, right? So I think that's a good phenomena. Now, whether a company like Snowflake enables the same skill sets of people who were data engineers before to also utilize their product, are they being incorporative of and inclusive of the kind of skills that were previously built out in this industry? Maybe, maybe not. You can argue that. Are they creating new abstractions? Yes, obviously they're going to be creating new abstractions. So that's something which is debatable about this paradigm.
Simplification, abstraction. I think that part was something that all these products did in by parts. Almost every category winner from the erstwhile modern data stack vendor list, or if it still continues, I think everybody did that and achieved that to a consistent experience, right? Joe, what's your viewpoint on that?
I mean, you want to know what was left behind? Rewind 15, 20 years ago, right? Buying software back then was an act of misery. It sucked. That's what we left behind, right? All the big vendors now, they're trying to be hip. They're like, oh, we're in the cloud now. We got a cloud offering. We got a Snowflake competitor, right? That's what you left behind. They're trying to catch up. But what's next, right? I think we did solve a large part of the friction problem with consuming, software for the purpose of analytics, right? Again, that's what I feel the modern data stack is. But I would challenge anyone in this room to tell me that the world is better off 15, 20 years ago with respect to
No way, right?
anything, maybe except for data modeling. But it's like
I think we were making a lot more
I'm
sense
trolling
back in the
Vinoth
day.
over here. Yeah, but no. I mean, from a consumption point of view, I'll give you $100 right now to anybody who can tell me that was a better time.
That was a better time.
Because we had
You can prove to me. Sorry, yeah. Everyone can tell me that. Thanks, Kareem. Who wants to go next?
I want to take your viewpoint, Vinoth. Like, will you call ClickHouse, Onehouse as a modern data stack? Will you associate in that category, or would you be heavy on the engineering side? And would you aspire, like looking back, want to associate yourself as a modern data company? Like, take a
Yeah, well, we are modern and we solve.
that's a good one.
We are simplifying the lakehouse for people. You know, in essence, what we build is essentially a snowflake experience
Yeah.
for the lake, which doesn't exist. Lake, you need to tinker with a bunch of open source tools and kind of like build with your bare hands, like integrate everything, right? So we make that easy. So in that sense, yeah, I'm aligned with the spirit of what was discussed here on the modern data stack. But the thing I'm curious about, for example, to throw it back to the panel, was Databricks, Spark, were these things part of the modern data stack? Yes, no? Because that was my impression, is that it's very warehouse centric. I don't know if that's how it was, or is it my bubble?
I would agree to that. I think some points on that is it was warehouse centric. It was Snowflake at the center, an ingestion tool, a governance not a full-fledged governance, a simplified catalog or a governance tool, a DBT in the center, operating on top of Snowflake, and then a consumption layer, a simple looker or a simple BI tool, right? I think that was the minimalistic stack that people could live with back in the day. But then Divyansh raised an interesting point, right? Some of these vendors are stepping into the left or the right and stepping into another MDS company right now. Shuveb, I want to take your viewpoint. How do you see that approach? And you're building a firm. I would equate your product little bit on the MDS side as well. How do you think that strategy is working out?
Yeah, so actually it's pretty tough to do that, right? Because we have to unseat a lot of people. It's never good for a startup to go and try to do that. But the other angle is that, hey, the modern data stack, right? The individual components, it's not only about getting started easily. It's also about managed services, right? You, for example, right? I mean, it's not only about, hey, I can go without anybody's permission. I can go get like a free trial and get started. But then again, I don't want to manage that stuff, right? That's also equally important. The other thing is that when to your point, hey, okay, that's the next step. But if you take a step back and look at it, what's happening with data is essentially what happened with the application stack 5 years back, 10 years back, right? It's just that it's just lagging for the data stack, right? Once you have this, what happens next? You have infrastructure as infrastructure as code. We still don't have that for the modern data stack, but I think that's coming, right? So all these best practices will filter through. They will come, but the bet that we also made, at least when we started out, was that, hey, everything eventually turns into a cloud appliance. So will the data stack. So today, how many mid-market companies have the expertise to find the folks to, for example, get connectors from somebody, a warehouse from somebody, a DBT cloud, Looker, observability. Now, there's half a dozen things. How many people have the wherewithal to go put this stuff together? The bet we were making is come to somebody like, I don't think it's a pitch for Zipstack, like Kebula, Y42, Mozart Data, all these folks, including Zipstack. What we are trying to do is we are trying to tell you that, hey, the moment you sign up, you have a whole data stack. Whether it will work or not, we don't know, right? Only time will tell. But this is where we think it's going.
Adding on, I think I'll ask that question to Joe and yourself as well. The ICPs itself change. Your buyer personas change, and how are you facing that challenges? Because
it's a huge challenge.
Right?
See, the thing is, eventually, to be very honest with this audience here, even first we thought this is an enterprise product. It's not. When we went to the enterprise, we faced tremendous friction because they said, this is super awesome. You just blew our minds. But where does this fit in?
Yeah.
Right? Because, hey, it's very difficult. Somebody's trying to unseat, for example, Snowflake. Take it from me, it's not easy. The moment you have data sitting in and there's downstream use cases for that data, unseating that warehouse is not going to be easy, right? So we said, hey, let's go mid-market, little down market, and then we found there were a lot of takers because they didn't have the time for them. I mean, for example, to stitch a data stack together, we found a lot more reception there.
Okay.
Right? So yeah, everything changed. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And are the personas there because they're thinking unified? Are they thinking end to end?
Managed fully managed.
Okay.
No need to put together a data stack.
Okay.
All these things are helping us, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Divyansh, you want to add on it?
I think it's very hard to be in the middle of everything, right? It's good to be on the other sides, extremes of anything that you're doing. So it's good to be a snowflake.
Yeah.
It's good to be an application. When you are like a mix of both of those things, it's difficult for the customer to understand what you're trying to do. At the same time, difficult for you to also enforce the vision on the world, right? So that's my take on I think what Shuveb was mentioning. While I think the world has been left behind, a lot of companies don't have the resources to manage their own data stack. It's an extremely hard, convincing journey for any company because they're going to mature someday, hopefully, and then they're going to need like individual pieces of the stack that are programmable and have the ability to do things. At the same time, they're also going to need business applications, right? So they're going to need tools for their sales team, which is going to be a Salesforce, obviously. They're going to need something for product analytics, which is what we are building at Houseware on top of the data stack. They're also going to need like a marketing stack and things like those, right? So as these things gain prominence, I mean, either it's good to be just the application for a function or just be the underlying layer. It's hard to be like an all-in-one is what I have seen.
The unified data stack is interesting, right? And even Snowflake, Databricks, they're trying to do end-to-end as well. Joe, that's a question for you. How do you think the unified stack is playing out? What are you hearing from customers that you're working with?
I want to take a page from ERP systems. Who knows what ERP systems are? Enterprise Resource Planning. They're the big monoliths. Who's heard of SAP?
Any SAP gurus?
SAP, yeah, very big company. The way I see this playing out, this plays out in one of two ways. The unified data stack becomes the equivalent of an ERP system for a company. Hey, do you know how hard it is to rip out an ERP system in a company? It won't ever happen, right? So if you're smart, if you're Databricks or Snowflake, you're going to want the unified system precisely because it's going to be impossible to rip this thing out. If you're modular, you're just a feature, right? And so I think what SAP, Oracle have shown is that if you can sink your teeth into the core operations or core practices of a company, and data is becoming more front and center, I call this a core practice, good luck getting this thing out. You won't.
If you wear a customer's hat, right, and let's say you're the CDO of the company, what would your strategy be?
If I'm the CDO, I would ask what's in it for me. Well, not me personally. Maybe depends where you live, I guess. But what's in it for the company? If I'm going to go all in on this platform, what do we get out of this at the end of the day versus the, because I always look at things through total cost of ownership, but also total opportunity cost of ownership, right? If I'm going to go all in on your product, that means I need to get something out of this. And it means that I'm making a good bet that because I've forsaken all other opportunity out there, that this is a good investment over the next, I don't know, 200 years in this case or something like that, right? So it's like you're taking a gamble. You're taking a gamble in the sense where you can anticipate where data is going to fit into your company if this company can provide that for you. So, yeah, it's a good question, though. I don't know. If there are any CDOs out there who are listening,
Not sure if you
chime in or use a Joe 20 for 20% off BetterHelp. So.
Good. One final question, and my alarm just beeped. The hotel wants us to vacate the space in a couple of minutes. What do you think the MDS vendors should do? Probably, Vinoth, I'll take your viewpoint and do a quick one or two. And what should the data engineers do in their career? Because the MDS stack had made it so simple, but then the most complexity was in the processing side, right? So we all focus heavily on the processing. We never focus about how to get data, how to catalog it, how to govern it, because most of us are data engineers on this room. Our workloads were revolving around this. And how do you see this evolving in a unified stack? Because everything is end-to-end in a single stack. Let's say Databricks invested in Prophecy, they acquire them probably down the road. Even the processing becomes auto-generated, right? I mean, the code that we write today in Scala.
Yeah, I mean, there's more layers of automation platformization being built on top, right? In my opinion, I think again going back to the topic, right? Is it dead or not? But it's definitely like a misnomer, like in some sense, right? Because if you look at data lakes, they're like as big a trend as in the last 10 years. Data science is a big trend.
Yeah.
Something that does not like kind of hasn't included that as it grew is kind of like a problematic thing, right? Yeah. So I think MDS vendors on the whole, I think, to figure out a better way to actually talk about this unified stack. How do I use the various components of the modern data stack in a cohesive sort of way, right? A lot of times they feel like different puzzles of, like kind of overlapping puzzles of like a big,
A common access governance is a big challenge,
correct.
right? Access
They all
governance and
overlap
common
in like
governance.
very, very subtle ways with each other, and there's some boundaries, more maybe APIs, some standard interfaces, kind of like things like that, right? For at least interoperability, we are doing our bit around like one table and getting the format kind of that figured out. Without that, there is no storage interoperability. So I think we need to figure out these touch points and then make it more modular for people to buy.
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
Any closing comments, Divyansh, from your side?
I think as data people, we definitely love to kill and make things born. So I think I'm waiting for the next thing. Vinoth touched on
Already?
yeah, Vinoth touched on an interesting point around, I think, unification, at the same time also interoperability. I think
That's
what Anant
key.
has been working on with Schemata is like sort of goes in that direction, right? Where you upstream solve this problem. I was talking to him earlier and we were talking about like how in security you try to shift left everything as much as possible.
Yeah.
How can you shift like as many problems upstream rather than on the downstream application side so that everything becomes easier, right? The ERP system becomes easier. People don't have to rip and replace the same thing again and again. So yeah, hopefully that's the future. That's what I'm interested in. And yeah.
Joe?
I don't think the modern data stack is dead, but I do think it's really boring. So I think we can call it the boring data stack. And I think it's time to move on. I mean, there's
Anything that is simple is boring, right?
I think that what it aimed to solve, it already solved.
Yeah.
Simplifying analytics.
Yeah.
That workflow to me is like that's a solved problem for
Yeah.
batch analytics. I think the next thing is I write about in chapter 11 of my fine book. Go get it. I'm kidding. Is what we call the live data stack. So what you saw, the commoditization of data warehousing, I think you're going to see that with streaming, where it's going to become so dead simple to do. To me, that's the next shoe to drop, and I'm really excited about that. But the modern data stack itself, I'm bored senseless with it. Which is great. It did its thing. Time to move on.
Yeah. Closing comments, Shuveb?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I think what people build on modern data stack is more important, and I feel that the next really good step could be data products. I'm super excited about that.
Oh, that's
right?
an interesting category
yeah,
altogether.
right? So, yeah, I mean, another debate, but then again, I think rather than the mesh, I think what really came from the mesh, one really good concept is data products, and I think, hey, how do we build on top of a pretty much very diverse set of technologies, and the data mesh can be kind of a fabric.
We have the Lego blocks. Somebody
Exactly.
needs to assemble it. I
Right.
think that's what Divyansh is trying to solve
Yeah,
with
so-
Houseware, like solving for a domain problem.
Exactly. I think that's more important than the actual modern data stack. I don't think it's
We'll take one or two questions from the audience before they kick us out.
You have 6 minutes.
We overshot by 6 minutes.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
You have minus 6 minutes.
Two questions, please.
Sorry, one of the modern data stack element was that headless BI or the metric layer. So with all these MicroStrategy and those aspects of the world, right? Do you see guys going back from that, MicroStrategy layer or a Tableau layer and building a metric layer, or they just survive with what they have today?
I think Vinoth wants to take that answer.
Sorry, it's his favorite question, is it?
Oh, no, go for it. No? What was your question?
Yeah, do you see guys moving away from rebuilding that metric layer outside MicroStrategy or Tableau of the world? Do you see that adoption now happening, or that they are happy with what they have today and solve this problem later, kinds?
No easy questions today, right? That's not going to happen. But I think, yeah, that wave came. I think some companies still try to solve for it on customer-facing applications where you have to serve BI in a lot more, I would say, where the concurrency of the use case is much higher. So you have like 1,000 people logging in, looking at the same dashboard in a business app. But is there a thing? I mean, probably, I don't know, honestly. I did one thing when the modern data stack came out. I looked for a domain moderndatastack.com. It was not available. And the next thing I did was postmoderndatastack.com. So I own that. So if anyone wants to buy it, I mean, this is an open offer.
And if you're talking metrics layers and like headless BI, I can make a strong argument Excel's already accomplished that.
Any last questions?
Yeah. So Abdul here. So I got an opportunity to build an earlier version of data mesh. So I worked for ThoughtWorks before data mesh was out. We had our own internal data platform inspired by data mesh. And one of it is that the data engineering platform, the self-serve platform. And how does it interplay with modern data stack? So moving on, we see the modern data stack eating up all the existing the data lakes, moving away from data lakes, have a cloud data warehouse, BigQuery, Redshift, and get rid of all the Hadoop. So is that the direction that we are moving to enable a purely self-service data platform?
Somebody wants to take it?
Yeah, whatever. Here you go.
So I think I think I had a similar question this morning, right? The mesh and the lake, the warehouse, they're like at two different levels. I don't think the mesh, like these are just nodes in the mesh, right? And overall, I think modern data stack should expand and include data science and these diverse use cases more. The other way, like include the lakes and these things rather than. I don't see like warehouses completely like replacing data lakes or something. They're both going to exist. As much as we talk a lot about one eating the other and stuff, the reality is, data analysts like how easy it is to work with cloud data warehouses. Data engineers and data scientists love that they can write code and, tinker with data. They have a lot of flexibility on the lake. That's going to be there for a long time.
I want to give a shameless plug too. There was a fun talk that Jamak and I did a couple weeks ago on data mesh learnings about this topic. So go check it out.
And you can discuss during the evening session. I think we would close it out. Thank you everyone for your thoughts. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Like we shared with you, there's an after party that starts around 5:30 or 6. That's at Community in Brigade Road, not less than a kilometer from here. Please do join us. It's on the first floor, right? I can ask and we'll be there as well, right? So take some time, refresh yourself and see you there at the community.